comments. I agree with. I think it's good.
It is 5:30 and time for our Monday meeting that we're having on Tuesday, September the 4th. Carl, roll call, please.
Councilmember Remley.
Here.
Ronayne.
Here.
Lunsman.
Here.
Slate Hansen.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Bunceness.
Here.
Olson.
Here.
Rux.
Here.
Mayor Leeson.
I'm here. Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Need a motion to approve last week's minutes, please.
Moved. Second.
Motion Bunceness, second by Remley. If there are no changes, all in favor of approving say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Open forum tonight. We have a guest, Justice Forum. If you want to come up to the microphone here, Justice Horn. I'm sorry for open forum, and tell us why you're here.
I'm just here speaking on behalf of NSU student government, actually, and I have a prepared statement. Mayor, City Councilman, my name is Justice Horn, and I'm Chair of the State and Local Government and Senator here on behalf of Student Association here at NSU. I'm a student athlete, and I'm involved here with several organizations, and I list them out, but I don't think I need to. My duty is to represent the students, faculty, and administrators of NSU. With our new constitution, my committee was created to uphold a strong relationship with administrators, the Aberdeen City Government, and the South Dakota State Government. I will attend a City Council meeting monthly and report back legislations, propositions, and issues related to Northern State University. It is our duty to stay on date and be up to date on things going on in the city of Aberdeen. I'm aware there's an important vote being conducted on today's relating to the plans and futures of Northern State University. I look forward to the opportunity to work with you and represent Northern State University and be the voice if need be. Thank you for the time. And are there any questions you have for me?
I guess I'd ask first, Justice, how'd you end up at Northern?
I actually wrestle there at NSU, yeah. From Kansas City, Missouri, actually.
Okay. I guess I would say, just preliminary, when I was first elected mayor many years ago, I invited the student body presidents of Presentation and Northern to come to the council meetings, and they did for a while. And then I think, honestly, they just got bored with this and stopped coming.
Yeah.
Hopefully you'll find more reason to have enthusiasm about joining us here. We don't really have anything major for Northern tonight, but things will come up as we go along, and feel free to bring other people with you as you find other people with interest.
Yeah, I'm just here, just sitting in and just seeing how you guys conduct yourselves, and you guys conduct yourselves professionally here, and we appreciate that.
Okay.
I was just going to say, I thought I heard in your comments that you'd be here monthly.
Yeah.
We meet weekly.
Yeah, I know. You guys work hard.
I don't know about that. I don't know about that, but we are on YouTube.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can catch the
Yeah.
other 3 meetings that you missed.
Yeah.
One other thing, I guess the advice that I would give is, as important as we like to think that we are here, most of the real work done in the city is done between 8 and 5 by our department heads during the day and our city manager. And so if there's a kind of a nuts and bolts operational thing you're interested in, you would probably find out more with a half-hour visit to somebody here in City Hall or at one of the department heads than you would taking your Monday evening to come. So really feel free to do that if you have a real interest in this. So.
Yeah. I really appreciate you guys' time. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have just 3 items in our consent calendar, items A, B, and C, one of which is a approval of an event at Northern State on September 27th.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion Johnson and second by Bunceness. Questions on any of them? All in favor of approving those items, then say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Under new business, item A is application for a cab driver's license submitted to us for possible approval or denial. And Chief McNeil, I am told that the police department is recommending denial.
That is correct. We strongly recommend denying this license. I'm prepared to go into length about the details of this, but I do not see the gentleman here tonight, and with the informational packet I sent around, if you briefly glance at that, there's a lot of things that will jump out at you. So again, not to go too far into this, but we recommend not approving
I
this.
move denial of the taxi cab driver's license.
Second.
Motion, Ronayne, second by Remley. Questions, anyone? All in favor of approving that motion to deny, then say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item B, presented for first reading, our 2019 budget. And before we entertain a motion for that, I will turn it over to the author of the budget, Mr. Lander.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Levinson. I'd like to just read one paragraph out of my opening letter that kind of describes what the 2019 budget was all about. The recommended 2019 budget was prepared with limited growth and very few changes within operations. Actually, the total growth of the budget was 1.37% when you don't count the transfers and airport projects. I'm recommending adding only one additional full-time position, and this position would be the school resource officer, which would allow the school district to have one officer assigned to each middle school and would provide additional coverage to assist the elementary schools. And so in the end, when you look at airport, parks and rec, and the general fund, we're talking about $33,080,945, and when you add all funds together, including general fund, park, airport, debt service, enterprise funds, we're talking about $65,232,270.
So we'd entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion by Bunsen, second by Ronayne to pass first reading of the ordinance, and I would open it up for questions, comments, or potential amendments, if you have any of those.
I have one amendment. I would like to reduce the Parks and Rec second penny sales tax expenditure for fiscal year 2019 by $50,000.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Second by Landsman. Clint, you have the floor.
A couple things with this is earlier this last year they came to us and wanted $150,000 for lights. I guess I forgot to state in my motion that I wanted this $50,000 moved to concrete street rehabilitation. So, sorry, I don't know if you need another second on that, but
We'll just include that.
yeah.
So.
That would have then came out of second penny sales tax as unexpended balance. So we took money that we could use for other things and paid for light improvements that they've been working on for some period of time. Also, I'm a little dismayed when I look at their capital outlay that they just put everything in it and they don't, follow normal city protocol where they list the projects they're going to do and what they're going to do with our money or the taxpayer money. So those are two reasons why I'm bringing forward this amendment to help replenish our second penny sales tax a little bit, get some extra street work done, and then let them know that next time plan more efficiently.
Just as a matter of clarification, does this include your intention to give them direction as to where that $50,000 comes from in their plans for next year?
I don't care. I'll just reduce
Okay.
the total
Okay.
second penny expenditure, and then they can spend the rest of the money however they see fit.
All right, thanks. Questions or comments on the amendment?
I'm going to vote against the amendment. Clint, I understand where you're coming from. We had this discussion early in the year and seemed like there was a lot of support for this, but I think if you look at what Parks and Rec does for this community, I think we should just keep the $50,000 and let them continue to invest in Aberdeen. Cunard Arboretum is a prime example of public-private partnership, and it's a wonderful place for the community. I don't know if that will be a place where this $50,000 would come from, but I would just, I understand where you're coming from, but if Lynn is okay with what they've presented, then I think we go ahead and allow them to just continue to do what they're doing. bike paths. The quality of life issue for Aberdeen is important, and the $50,000 is, I think, needs to stay there.
I understand your point of view, Dave. I'm not against that point of view, but this happens a little more frequently than other departments.
Oh, I don't think it.
Well-
This was a major one. I think
Yeah.
I would agree that this was a major one, but they do good work in this department, and I'm not willing to have them go backwards.
Other questions or comments? I would just say from whenever anybody asks me about our Parks Department, my response is usually to say the one thing that I've recognized when I was in Lynn's position and since then is that Doug and his people, and he has such people who have been there for so long, they simply will not do anything less than as perfect as they can get it.
Mm-hmm.
They just won't. If they can't do something to look nice, to function the way it's supposed to do, they just won't do it. They'll do it on another project, and I think we're somewhat unique in that. And as Dave said, Clint, I understand your motives behind this are not critical of the department itself. It's the process. But I have a lot of faith in Doug, and if there's 50,000 there, I think he and his people will use it well.
We can just tell Lynn to, watch for these things, and, you make the decision when this is necessary to make a point. But, there was a lot of pressure for this particular expenditure because of the Woodbat League that was coming. And so what are they going to do? They weren't going to be the obstacle in the way, I don't believe. So, anyway.
Any other comments on it?
I do have one comment. I appreciate both comments here. The part that I had a problem with, it was the first day of the first year that they come with a request for $150,000. They didn't try to rearrange anything. They didn't try to work it, and then later on in the year go, you put us in a bad spot, and then ask for something later. They literally came on the very first day without, in my opinion, trying to work anything around. In the past, Robin's come to us and said, hey, we needed this. We reallocated money so we could have this stuff, but yet, we could put this off. We didn't even get any of that from Parks and Rec, and I personally didn't appreciate that. Because if they would have tried, I'd have been much more appreciative of saying yes later on. But with the fact of, to me, little to no effort to try to work anything around was, so in my opinion, I'm going to vote with Clint on this just for that principle that they should have known or at least tried in order to come up with that money.
Okay. Other comments, anyone? Mark?
I think this meeting has sent that message already, and I agree with Mike and Dave on this. We should allow this to happen, so allow Parks and Rec to have this $50,000.
Who are we punishing when we do this? I understand there's a message that needs to be sent, but who are we punishing when we take 50,000? You're not punishing Doug Johnson and his group. The result is that something's not going to happen for this city, and that's so you're punishing the citizens of Aberdeen. So
I agree with you, David, but in some respects, though, they asked for 150. We're just voting for a third of that, which is actually fairly small compared to. We could have, or Clint could have put together $150,000 and try to get it all back. He's just asking for 50, which sends a message, but doesn't really, I don't think, sends any type of major blow to their fairly large budget anyway.
Other comments on the amendment? If not, Carl, how do you have the amendment listed there? Stated?
I have it rather simply, a motion to reduce the Park and Rec Forestry special sales tax budget by $50,000.
Okay, all those in
Can-
favor?
I mean, he did
Yeah.
state additional
And the
information.
money moved to concrete street.
Yeah,
program.
okay, right, okay. Yep,
point. Thank
that's
you.
included in there. So a yes vote would be to remove the money from the budget. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Let's do a roll call vote, Carl. I'm not sure. Again, an aye vote here is to reduce the Parks and Rec budget by 50,000.
Councilmember Remley,
No.
Ronayne,
Nay.
no, Lunsman,
Aye.
Slate Hansen,
No.
Johnson,
No.
Bunceness,
No.
Olson,
Aye.
Rux,
Aye.
Mayor Leveson.
No. So the motion to amend fails. We're back to the main motion. Any other questions, comments, or amendments for first reading?
Question, if there is an amendment on at the next meeting, and we need to have a third reading, is there still time? I mean, you have this scheduled in so we can, I know we're at the
The
beginning
second
of the
reading would
month.
be September 17th. And so you would have one other meeting after the 17th.
So if we're going to have any amendments, next week is the last one for amendments.
We have to get it to the county by 1st of October? Or?
29th.
Okay. Okay. So, any other comments on the main motion for first reading? Carl, roll call for that?
Councilmember Rux,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Bunceness,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Slate Hansen,
Aye.
Lunsman,
Aye.
Ronayne,
Aye.
Remley,
Aye.
Mayor Leveson.
Aye, motion carries. Item C is the appointment of Renita Kainz to the Aberdeen Parks and Recreation Board. The term would extend through June of 2023.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion Bunceness, second by Remley. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item D, we have just a few bills presented for payment tonight. Northwest Energy Utilities, $11,570. U.S. Bank credit card, $49,517. AT&T phone charges, $1,056. UPS charges, $27. Graphic Design Services by Adam Bilkey, $39. And payments to Thompson and Stoltenberg to attend a conference, $300.
Move to approve.
Motion Johnson and second by Remley. Questions on any of them? Carl, roll call, please.
Councilmember Remley,
Aye.
Ronayne,
Aye.
Lunsman,
Aye.
Slate Hansen,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Bunceness,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Rux,
Aye.
Mayor Leveson.
Aye. Motion carries. Item E is payroll August 19 to September 1 and City Share of Social Security, Old Age, Survivors, Insurance, Retirement, Health, and Life.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion Ronayne, second by Olson. Carl?
Councilmember Rux,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Bunceness,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Slate Hansen,
Aye.
Lunsman,
Aye.
Ronayne,
Aye.
Remley,
Aye.
Mayor Leveson.
Aye. Motion carries. Lynn, your report?
Okay, thank you. I have three items this evening. The first item is rental inspections. You talked about that when I was on vacation, so I thought before I do explanation of charges for services that I calculated, it would be germane that I allow planning and zoning and building inspection to explain what services they're providing today, as well as the fire marshal office. And so if you two or three gentlemen come forth and explain our current services, I would appreciate it. And from there, then I'll talk about the numeric values that I calculated.
You guys come on up to the mic. While they're coming up to the mic, planning and zoning, mainly it's the code enforcement department, deals with health safety issues with buildings and nuisance items and those sorts of things. Now, the health safety issues are mainly on I just want to say mainly on a complaint basis, but the only time we get into a structure is when a tenant calls us and we get let in. We can't just go into the structure and do that. So those are the only times we get in to do any type of inspection inside of a rental or, any other home, I guess.
Mr. Horn, this is maybe a particularly appropriate item for the first night you're here, because this may affect Northern students, as much or more than anybody. And as you listen to what's discussed here tonight, you might want to take that back to the council to get impressions from Northern students as to whether they would be interested in having their apartments inspected by the city for health and safety. That's what we'll be discussing tonight. So, gentlemen, tell us what you're doing for us.
Well, basically, the fire department, we do fire and life safety inspections at 3 units or more, multifamily. We don't do single-family rentals or duplex rentals. And the same thing, we're looking for the Akbarol working smoke alarms in the unit and or in the common areas, depending on the size of the building. Access to fire extinguishers, egress window access from sleeping rooms, and general condition of the building as far as heating, cooling, any other issues that would be fire code related is what we're looking at. And normally we get to them at least once every year or once every 18 months, depending on how work schedule goes.
Just, not to go into too much detail, but how often are there violations? Do most of the time people are doing what they're supposed to do, or do you very frequently have to force people to do stuff?
Frequently we have violations, either inoperable smoke alarm, and whether that's because property owner or building manager isn't maintaining it or no tenant, yeah, I'm still smoking and it's driving me nuts. They disable or disconnect it. And, normally, they're supposed to check it when they move in and check it when they move out. Then it's a little easier to track that, we could have the city attorney or somebody file charges that, you tampered with the device. It's not operational. But majority of the time, we find some type of violation. And then depending upon the seriousness of the violations, then, Max is usually re-inspecting or following up.
So the fact you find them in units of 3 or more would lead us to believe you'll probably find them in units of 1 or 2 also.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Others?
From the building inspection end, I see them if they're being converted or during new construction. Once in a while with code enforcement, if there is a kind of a severe case, I'll go in and help them pinpoint building code violations. So on the building inspection end, we're not as involved as these guys are. I'm just here to take in the conversations. So.
Okay. Lynn?
Okay, from here, Robin, would you be kind enough to flip over to my computer? What I did was a cost analysis if in fact you wanted to do more what I would call nuisance inspections versus what I would call fire safety inspections, because you don't really get into the condition of the porch or broken windows or anything like that. You're basically more fire suppression type inspection, and you don't go out and do those nuisance inspections not unless you're called.
That's code enforcement does when they're notified.
Okay. So what I did is I took the material from the Census Bureau, because keep in mind, we don't have an active file for what I would call renter-occupied units, and I had to work from what census material that I could gather. And they're indicating that in 2010, there was approximately 4,701 renter-occupied units within the city of Aberdeen. I'm estimating as of 2016, that number is now 5,530. And you may ask, well, give me the definition of renter-occupied units so I better understand what the census is doing. And I have a definition from the census that goes on to say, a housing unit is a house, apartment, or a group of rooms, or a single room occupied or tenanted for occupancy as separate living quarters. Separate living quarters are those in which the occupants do not live and eat with other persons in the structure and which have direct access from the outside of the building or through a common hall. So I don't think we would be at the dorms, but we would be at, other apartment complexes throughout the city. Sitting down with Brett and going through kind of analysis and comparing it to our other code inspectors, we feel to inspect roughly 5,500 rental units that would take us a 3-year period. So we're looking at 1,833 inspections per year. And so therefore we believe that we would need 2 individuals. And keep in mind, they would have to do approximately 7 inspections a day, but as you have people that are in non-compliance, then you would have to come back and do the paperwork associated to sending them a notice of compliance and then going forward. And so we think we need 2 individuals, and therefore, if I wanted the fee to be cost neutral to the city, it would require a $75 fee per unit every 3 years. So roughly it costs $25 a year, but we're looking at $75 to cover 2 additional code inspectors. That would also cover the annual vehicle cost, training, supplies and gas, and a part-time clerk, and maybe a change within the supervisor's salary for new services being provided. Any questions?
Okay, just open it up for general discussion, I guess. Jennifer?
So, Lynn, how do we get people to tell us that their units are that they have units that are for rent and they need to be inspected? I mean, what if somebody just says, yeah, that person who's living in my house is just a friend, they don't pay rent? How do we force that?
We would do a general notice within the paper to explain the changes, but from past occurrences, and I'm thinking the mayor could verify this as well as Brett, when we started doing the daycare inspection, there are a lot of people that will call in on their neighbor.
Yeah. A lot of people like to tattle.
Turning your neighbor.
Other questions?
Yeah, just a question for the fire department. You said you do an inspection once to 12 months to 18 months. So you're getting into these apartments quite often, and you're looking, I think Lynn said you're not looking for broken glass, but maybe you are. What are you seeing out in the apartments that are out there? Are you inspecting dangerous places? Or would you speak up and say this is a dangerous complex?
Yeah, if Max finds something, then yeah, he notifies code enforcement, building department. So yeah, we find issues structurally, foundation or deck area or something like that, then that's when code enforcement gets notified.
And how often do you run across something like this?
Well, the numbers Max ran last Friday is somewhere between 60 and 70 times a year.
That you report to code enforcement?
Yeah. So
and what's the...
4 to 6 times a month, give or take.
Okay. So this is, if a deck is not, it's dangerous or it just runs the gamut, or what are some of the examples that you report?
Like normally if there's broken glass along a stairwell, exterior stair, stairs that are rotten underneath, we'll report that because sometimes that's your primary means of egress for that upper level apartment. Waste accumulation in the backyard, like branches, trees, tire buildup, all that contributes to fire growth. So, especially some of these basements in the apartment, they turn into a landfill as well. People throw their trash down there and don't worry about it.
So some of this is from the renter's perspective. I mean, it's really the result of the renter that's...
Sometimes.
And then it's the landlord.
Brett, when we had the flood, we got a general authority to go look at basements all over town, and that's probably the best evidence that we have to get a general idea of what's going on. What was your impression of what would have happened at that time if we'd have had a relatively stringent or reasonable inspection program, and whether or not things have changed since 2007?
It was bad, some of the things that we saw. But there again, you have to look at the buildings that we went in for the flood, the ones that flooded. Some of them weren't the best structures to begin with. At that time, we would have been very busy trying to get buildings brought into compliance if we had a rental inspection program at that time. And as Councilmember Bunsen said, it's not just the landlords, it's the tenants. There's some tenants out there who are just, I hate to use the word, but they're pigs. And I understand, the landlords have an issue, the tenants have an issue. I'd like to clarify something from the fire marshal's standpoint. When they said that they went in and did inspections, they don't get in every unit. They knock on doors. If people don't let them in, they don't get to go in. They just can't go in those units. And a lot of people see them show up and they just won't let them in because it's the city and they're afraid if the city finds something and the landlord thinks that they're the ones that turned them in, they'll get evicted. Not normally the case, but that's a fear that some people have.
Yeah. But my follow-up question was, who follows up on those reported incidences? Do you go back and see that? Okay.
Clint?
And that kind of answers some of my question. You're not able to get into every unit, every rental unit when you're in there. But when you are in there, are you looking for things, when you do get into unit, are you also looking for electrical overloads? Maybe some improper wiring, or are you just looking for fire extinguisher, smoke detectors, egress?
Yeah, we're going in there, we're looking to make sure the appliances, if they're a grounded appliance, that they're in a grounded outlet, make sure they're not doing wiring themselves. Overall condition, make sure the smoke alarms and fire extinguishers aren't tampered with as well.
GFCI outlets within 6 feet of water source?
Sometimes it depends. If it's there, yes. And then we'll let the state electrical inspector.
Mike, you had maybe we should have had you go first, given your history of working with this stuff. But you probably have more insight than all of us. So go ahead.
I have always supported this, of course, because of my experience in code enforcement. And I think Aberdeen is the only college town in South Dakota that does not have rental inspection. I think you have to understand, and I would probably agree that the majority of the apartments in Aberdeen have no issues. They're good apartments, but there are numerous apartments that have serious issues, heating issues, no heating in the winter, appliances that don't work, plumbing facilities that do not work. But what I've found is that these tenants are afraid to report. They may call in and ask questions, and then we ask for an inspection, and they say, oh no, I don't want to get evicted. I don't want an inspection. And so we're not able to do an inspection. And so they live in these conditions, and it's an individual or it's a family with children. I've seen it all. It exists out there. It's not the majority, certainly, but there are people living that way in those conditions. And I'm not putting the blame on tenants or landlords. I'm just saying that these conditions exist, and rental inspections is a way to correct them and protect everyone that has to live in rental units.
One thing, Lynn, what's your number? 5,500?
Yes.
Rental units. The statistic I've seen from the census is we have approximately 1,000 households, and a household is described in that as any living space where there are two members of a related family or more. We have around 1,000 of those with an annual income of less than $25,000. And we probably always have. It won't be the same people. It'll be new, who are people making minimum wage and on that first step of the ladder. So one of the things we need to consider with all of this is those people need really cheap places to stay. And sometimes they're happy to stay in a place that's, to us, maybe would be substandard, but it meets their need, which is a low rental payment. So I think one of the considerations that we maybe would need to have in this is to talk with Presentation Sisters, to the Salvation Army, to Lutheran Social Services. Those are the people who would be impacted if this problem is as big as we think it is, and if we're running 2 or 3 families a week out on the street, because they're the ones that end up bearing the burden of that. So that's going to be a consideration at some point. Mark, you haven't spoken yet.
Yeah. My sister, you brought up Presentation Sisters. They deal with these low-income Hispanic people mainly, but they deal with all the immigrant situation that we have as far as translation and finding them places to live. And she is the only person, believe me, that asked me about this. I would think I would get some more feedback, but I only had one person talk to me about this, and that was my sister. And she was wondering, well, how are we going to pay for this? And I said, well, it will probably go back on to the tenant. And that's what it's going to have to be. I'm sure it is. So, and she said, well, that's what I figured. So, but anyway, she understands this, and these people cannot afford large rents. So that is an issue.
Did we put very many people, I'll get you in a second, Clint. Did we put very many people on the street after the flood, Brett?
Some. I wouldn't say a lot, but some.
Okay. Clint?
Do you have the ability to fine if someone doesn't correct issues now? The fire department doesn't.
No, we can't. We don't issue citations.
You don't issue
If
citations.
we get to that point, then it goes to Ron, and we go through the legal process.
Okay. And the other thing is I agree that, any fee we put on for this is going to get drawn down to the tenants, but inexpensive doesn't mean need to be unsafe. And you're right. It's not the landlord sometimes, and it's not the tenants all the time. But like I said, I think that that low-income person deserves just the same amount of safety as someone who can afford a real expensive apartment. Like I say, a lot of these issues, and I've seen some of the issues because I look at a lot of your reports just with daycares, but I also have been in some apartments where your reports are posted, are basically things that are inexpensive and easy to fix. Smoke detectors, which, we've seen it in fires, are just a huge lifesaver if they're working properly. Fire extinguishers, are they checked and maintained? And egress, can you be alerted to the fire? Could you put out the fire if you need to, and can you get out if you need to get out? And those are three very important things. But like I say, I didn't know if there was an ability to find, because one of the apartments I was at when I was complaining had 3 inspections there all around the same time because they weren't fixing some of the issues that were noted on the first inspection. And so, and it may not be any fault of the landlord, because sometimes getting a service person in does take a little bit of time. But like I said, I did see three there that were within the same period of time where they weren't correcting an issue.
Procedurally, Lynn, I presume here we're talking about either the 2020 budget or a supplement down the line for the 2019 budget when we're talking about these numbers that you have here. Obviously, those are only 2 options, 2019 or 2020, and 2019 is already past first reading here. So what are your general thoughts on that? This, what is it, $150,000?
Yes.
That you'd be looking at for either a supplement, let's say if sales tax jumped up and we had that money available to supplement for 2019, or if we put it off to 2020, how does that fit in with your longer-term budget thinking?
Well, when I did the presentation for the 2019 budget, I think if you go back and look at the 4-year average of sales tax increase, it was less than 1% for the last 4 years, and so that's bothered me. But at the same time, because of the Supreme Court decision, I feel that maybe some of those sales will be gathered back through the Department of Revenue, and I see now they're talking about special session to take care of the sales tax. Until I actually receive those revenues, I don't believe that they're there.
Okay.
I would like to have a period of time where we could see that the revenue's there. So I don't think I have sufficient new revenue source to add this into our existing operations, and that's why I looked at it on a fee basis. Maybe a portion of it could be, based upon new revenues, but I don't think Carl will tell you that we have adequate revenue sources to add this without having a portion of it be fee basis.
Yeah, sorry to speak over you there. What I was leading into there was, I think that's good, because even if it does go to 2020, that would give us time to put in the regulations and the specifications and give tenants and landlords an opportunity to be ready for this and it's going to take them, some of them going to take some time anyway. So even if it does go to 2020, that doesn't mean they could start working on it now.
Yeah, and to add to your comment, and I appreciate what you're saying there, because I went through and I checked the City of Brookings and rental property checklist, and they go through and they actually have the tenant sign a property review checklist, and they go through and they look at floor coverings, they look at walls and ceilings and doors, door locks, the smoke alarm, window coverings, carbon dioxide alarms, fireplaces. They have this list that the renter's supposed to go through and check whether on condition of arrival versus condition of departure, which then I think there's a lot more involved other than the fee is how far do you want to go into the inspection? Are you into the nuisance portion of it, or you're just into the life safety portion of it?
Good question.
Glenn?
I know we don't have the funds, but if we're going to charge by a fee per unit, the money would be there if we charge by the fee. At the same point, we don't need to also start with 2. We could start with 1, and we could start in the middle of 2019. But, because it will probably take us, Ron could probably work on, there's stuff out there we could do, but we'd want to do it, go through the ordinance, and then give a period of time to go through the licensing and all that. So as far as the money part, I think we have a way to capture it, and we don't need to start with 2 inspectors right off the bat. We could start with 1 and then work that in, the next one into the 2020 budget.
Lynn, it doesn't add up to covering it all, right?
No.
Not at $25.
No.
Well, if it's at 75.
And I disagree with
everyone-
hiring only 1 inspector. That means we'll only be doing half the job that we need to do, and it's going to create problems within the future.
Only for 6 months.
I don't care. I would
Okay.
rather do it right in the beginning versus doing it at only a 50% level.
But at the $75 fee, it's revenue neutral, and you're going to get all that money with every unit right at the bat, unless you phase it in.
Unless they don't admit to being a unit.
Have to amp up those fines.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, money is probably the least of the worry if we're going to do this, because we can charge the fee per unit, and all those fees will get registered in that current year. All those units will get registered because it's every 3 years. So you're receiving more money than what will cover the cost over the first year.
Brett, you and I looked at, wasn't it St. Paul that has a plan where if you pass without any remediation for 1 year, you get a 3-year grace period, but if any citations or corrections are required, then they come back the next year.
Yeah.
And as the city manager and I talked about this, that's one of the things we discussed too.
Okay.
I just want to follow up with what Clint's saying. I would think that we're not going to charge everyone $75 on July 1st when we can't get to them until July 1st of 2020. I don't think we can charge.
We might have a full council room if we track past
I
that.
just don't think we're going to get.
Well, you're going to charge at the time of
Are you
are you going to charge at the time of the inspection, or are you going to charge, like I said, and that's where it is. Is it prorated? Do you say, well, we're going to do this area 1 year, this area the next year? Those are all things that be worked out. But
No, my thought process was at time of inspection, because there's no way we can inspect 5,500 even with 2 people. So
Okay.
I was talking about a 3-year process. So
Yeah.
I would not have additional revenues the first year. It's not like everyone's going to pay $75 for 5,500 units. I'm only going to get at 1,800.
so then we're going to have to go after people who aren't paying.
Those are the logistical details
Yeah.
that Lynn and his staff are paid to work out.
Just one quick thing, and talking about the fees and everything. I think consideration should be given to the building code end of things. A lot of these lower income rental places don't have the egress windows and a lot of those things, which, to put in 2 egress windows is $2,000, which far exceeds the $25 fee that, potentially the tenant could absorb. So that it's necessary from the safety standpoint, but that could have a real adverse financial effect on it as well.
And that goes to the mayor's point of what that does to rents for these people that are already in some situation that they might not be able to afford. So
I think it would be interesting for us to talk to some people in Brookings and Sioux Falls and other towns and see what they've come across as far as just operational dynamics.
Well, I think what it really comes down to is what are we going to inspect for? I mean, if we are going to inspect and expect, yeah, right, get that, people to put in ingress windows in a, as you say, a very low value apartment, it's not going to happen. That's probably not reasonable. And that's one of the things I'm curious about is what kind of an ordinance are we going to be proposing? What kind of standards are we going to be proposing? This is really a situation where the devil is in the details.
That's right.
If we expect these to be, if we expect people to put, $10,000 into a $200 a month apartment, it's going to dry it up.
Right.
It's not going to improve it.
And I've been here long enough to remember these were a lot of the same comments the last time we had this, and nothing was done. So, just one of those things. We need to decide if we're just going to do it or we're not.
And, well, and what we're going to do.
Right.
Brett, can you tell us how often you get referrals from the Housing Authority? Because they're doing inspections when they're going to be helping with rent. What kind of referrals do you get from them?
We don't.
Really?
No. And their inspection checklist is rather light as to what they require. And since we're on that lines, I guess if this is something that the council is wanting the city manager and staff to move forward with, I would really like to know as to what degree you would like us to move forward.
Personally, I'd like to look at what some of the ordinances are in other locales to see what they are doing. Are they requiring, I think that's a great example, are they requiring egress windows where there were none? Or do they have lesser standards?
And that's one thing that Lynn and I had already discussed. So.
Yeah.
Well, we've got not one but two people here, writers from the American News tonight, so I would hope this would at least generate a story that would then generate some feedback to us.
So you're requesting some information from other communities. You have Brookings, so maybe we can reach out to another community and get their example.
Perhaps that could be circulated among the council.
Yes.
Okay. The mayor made a recommendation earlier. I would like to actually go to the city of Brookings and visit the inspectors and versus just looking at the city ordinances to find out and
We'll pay your mileage
about issues.
We'll cover your mileage.
Okay. Well, even
Maybe
if
me
you don't
all.
cover my mileage, I'd still like to go to Brookings and talk to them.
Take the wife, spend the weekend.
I don't know if Northern has a program where they deal at all with off-campus housing, if there is even a registration of what qualifies or what doesn't. You might want to check on that for us and see if they wanted to open that can of worms at all. Because about half of the places that I stayed in wouldn't have come close to passing, but that was 50 years ago. So,
did you care at that time?
That's what kind of why I brought. I just wanted low rent. I just wanted to live in a place I could afford. So.
It's kind of funny you say that because as school started, then I start getting parents calling me. Yeah. Do you realize that my child is living in Northern?
I think the standard has moved up since the time you were in school.
Usually depended on location, too. If you get closer to certain areas, it was better.
We didn't realize there was any rule as to the number of people per square feet either. So, but it varied. Other comments tonight? I think we've brought up a lot of things we need to think about, and I hope people, we know we get feedback from landlords, and we should. They're the ones in this business. They know more about it than we do. And I think we should also reach out to PC and LSS and to the Salvation Army and just get their thoughts on. And maybe I'll do that. So, okay. Anything more, Lynn?
Okay, the next item I'd like to bring up is it's email from Brad Wilson, which is administrator for South Dakota Workmen's Comp Fund, and I would like to read this because it's accomplishment on the city's behalf. In reviewing fund modifiers for the 2019 work comp renewal, yes, you can leave it if you'd like. Since you're probably working on next year's budget, I thought you would like to know that the City of Aberdeen's fund modification is decreasing 10% from 6,600s to 5,900s. That is the lowest in the entire pool of 493 members. To give you some examples, Aberdeen's 3-year loss ratio is 22%, and 5-year is 30%. For comparison, the Class 1 municipalities, and Class 1 municipalities are those municipalities over 5,000, their 3-year loss ratio is 48%, so we're almost half of what the norm is for 3-year, and 5-year it's 53%. And so, actually, I think, Carl, you told me this is the lowest rate of any member in existence?
Yes, for the workers' compensation fund, this would be the lowest in history that they've ever seen.
And so this comes through the hard work of human resources as well as the department heads about how we utilize our staff and the way they're trained. And it saves us money in the long run.
Great job.
That's hard. Our department heads are the best.
Moving on, I also provided you an Aberdeen Recreation Trails Plan update study. And this is actually perfect timing because last year Parks and Rec with ETC Institute partnered with Parks and Rec and did a total of 4,200 surveys were sent out to random households throughout the municipality. And they were asked within the survey to rate satisfaction with the overall value of households receipts from Parks and Rec programs. And likewise, they were asked as to what they deem to be the highest future facility priorities. And the end was within that survey, the wishes identified for top facilities improvements likely to have a positive impact were as follows: walking and biking trails, nature areas, and nature trails. And so with this Aberdeen Recreation Trails Plan update, it falls right into what people perceive to be the #1 priorities for rec within the community. And I gave you a copy of the Trails Update project schedule, whereas it shows we're looking at probably an open house in November. We're also looking at an open house probably in April, and then we're talking about draft submittal plan in May, as well as the final plan submitted to the council in July. And one of the things I'd like to highlight about this study schedule is we are going to look at utilizing some of our streets in conjunction with our trails, and so therefore we'll have a more complete trail plan throughout the city. So this will require signage as well as marking. And so the last time we did a trails update was 2010, so I think this will be germane with all the different development we've had within the city and the different areas where this will be a good study when it's done. And I'd like to thank the Department of Transportation for giving us the grant monies to do this extensive study, and I think you'll be happy with what you see in the end. Terrific.
Is that it?
That's all I have.
Anything? Anyone to check?
I'm never going to complain because I think our guys have replaced a lot of water main this year. However, our curb contractor has not been keeping up. There are several spots that are going on 3 months now that have been tore up, not replaced, not repaired. And over on Harrison, just south of Keole, between Keole and the old Arby's, some of the weeds in that area are probably beyond the waist.
We agree. It's been a challenge for the contractor this year. We're looking at coming up with maybe a different way of doing things next year. I think we're placing too much in one contract, and if labor is difficult to obtain, that labor force, we're putting way too much pressure on it. So I think we're going to break it up into smaller contracts. Right now, we've been trying to get the things done in the seal coat areas, so that our street department can complete their seal coating. Normally that's got to be done right around September 1, and we're closing in on that as far as the weather issues that we normally deal with. So they are going to have to hit some of these other areas very soon after they get done in that seal coat area. But we're going to come up with a different way of doing that process to lessen that pressure that we're seeing right now in those contracts.
Any more, Glenn?
Nope.
Okay. Anybody else?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion adjourned, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Adjourn.